My name is Stephen Gugu. I'm an angel investor. I'm part of an angel network called Victoria Business Angels Network. I'm a financial advisor, let's say corporate finance and project finance advisor in a company called Invest Africa. And I also teach at Strathmore Business School and Lagos Business School in Nigeria. So I'm really happy that we have such a good panel today. And just to mention the panelists, of course, the PS does not need an introduction. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Mr. Manix Monsoft. I hope I pronounced this okay. He's the Director of Financial Institutions at the Dutch Entrepreneurial Development Bank. That's FMO. We have an entrepreneur. So we'll get to hear from entrepreneurs' side whether everything we are speaking about is indeed relevant to them. And so we have Anne Obure, who's the Programs Manager from Nyayo Moms Sokos. Thank you so much for joining us. You may have noticed that Anne joined the first panel also. Thank you, Anne. We also have Mr. Christian Krivari, who's a Policy Officer, Private Sector and Financial Markets Development at the European Commission. Thank you very much for joining us. And finally, we have bankers in the room. So we have checks. So I have my good friend that I last met probably 4 or 5 years ago, Pauline Bayer, who's Executive Director, the head of Stanbic Foundation at Stanbic Bank Kenya. So thank you very much for joining us. Introductions have been done, so I think we can jump straight to the content of today. So let me start with you, Anne. Right? So we've had a number of things in terms of, the initiative that is being launched today and what it's looking to do for entrepreneurs. So my question to you is, number one, first of all, what does Nyayo Moms do? Just to contextualize that. What's been your funding journey, right? And what kind of challenges do you face and do entrepreneurs face, because you are an entrepreneur, when they're going towards this funding journey?
Thank you very much, Mr. Gogo. As you heard, my name is Anne Obure, and I'm here and Nyayo Moms Sokos. I'm the program manager. And what we do in Nyayo Moms is we're a digital marketplace where we give access to markets to the moms in the subscription. So we're also an information and knowledge hub. I run the tech part, so we do a lot of tech training. So we do the whole business training, business principles to make the businesses bankable, access to markets, so that these women are able to scale. So this encompasses things such as bookkeeping, financial management, and documents for their businesses, all the way from registration. So Nyayo Moms Sokos is located in Nairobi. We started off during COVID. So that's a time when people were told to stay home, and we had to be very innovative about how our women will still remain in business even as they stay home. So most of these are actually businesses that are run from home. Some of them have grown into their own offices, but some are still running online and from home. And then we actually help them up to the last mile delivery. So that is Nyayo Moms Sokos. About funding and how we have grown through the 3 years. We started off with our personal investments. I've been in the company from the beginning. So the founder, who's Maureen Makabane, I'm sitting in for her today because she's away. I began with her own finances. She would support these women. And then because she really had a heart to see the women businesses grow, she also runs other businesses of her own apart from Nyayo Moms Sokos. So one of the barriers we've had is access to finance. And that was also the topic in the first panel. And as I was listening to Dr. Laila Masharia, I was just talking about how sometimes when these women, and we too, as we are running Nyayo Moms Sokos, when we go to the banks and we really want to get the finance, sometimes they require collateral and we don't have that. Or even if we do, there's the other need of, are you married? Can your husband be your guarantor? And if you say no, they ask, is your father alive? And it reached a point where we actually had to intentionally look out for these women and see how they can grow. Because if we are also facing such a barrier, then it means then this is a big problem. So that's about funding. But what we did is after we started with our personal finance, we grew and we made sure that our business is bankable. So there's really there's advantage once you're bankable. Our books are in place. We are registered. We are in the right books of KRA, not the wrong side of KRA. And because of this, we were able to access a grant from We4A, Women Entrepreneurship for Africa. And we actually went through the training. Morina Makabane attended the classes, and I was also privileged to attend the pitching session in Lagos, Nigeria, last year in November. And this has just been an eye-opener for me as an intrapreneur, because I work under an entrepreneur, and also for Morina Makabane and her co-founders. So in short, we're just trying to find out what are the steps that these women can take from their own strength that will help them to be able to access this finance. One of the steps we really encourage is investing in your own business. So what do we do? We use ourselves as the example. You start off with what you have, and then if your business is a good idea, number one, if your business, you know the target market and you're reaching the target market, and if your product is a solution to a problem, then you invest in that business and the sales are going to be re-injected in the business, and that's how you grow. So like Diana was saying in the first panel, some of these businesses are not the 10x, but they're growing organically. We are really big on organic. While I handle the digital marketing part, I'm really big on social media. Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it TikTok? You know, sometimes a 10-second dance while you're delivering your flowers, maybe you're doing a flower business, that alone is a video that can actually make you scale. So it's in the small things that we are doing so that we can also be attractive to the big investors. And that's how we are growing in Your Mom Circles.
Wow, thank you very much. And thank you also for the good work that you're doing in terms of promoting women entrepreneurship. So I'd like to bring in PS Susan. PS, so I have a multi-pronged question for you because you're in government. And so on the one side, of course, there's the access to finance challenge that she's just spoken about. And I know we have the Hustler Fund that is looking to address some of those challenges. On the other front, we also have the policy side, and she brought in KRA. And in this country, when you hear KRA, if you're a business person, you call your accountant, your auditor, everybody, just tell them, please check everything. So question to you is, what is the government doing in terms of, number one, thinking about this policy side of things? I know there's a startup bill, which is looking to make things easier for entrepreneurs. So maybe you can, as you're answering the question, talk to us about what's the current status, what are some of the things you think it's going to be addressing, and of course I'm sure there's several other things that you're doing apart from what I've just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I come here as an actor, not as a messenger. First of all, let me begin by appreciating the Soko Mom. And Soko Mom, okay. Yeah, Soko Mom, I'm just wondering, where are Soko dads?
We feed them with our profits.
Really? Oh, this is good. So, Steve, let me begin by appreciating the previous panel. I think that was the focus of our conversation, because they really brought out, they called it meat, right? Yeah, so Rosemary, I think that was really good. It was an eye-opener. But also let me say this, that not just as a government, I think as a society, we must appreciate that we've not been having coordinated support to MSMEs. Every stakeholders has been doing their own little things. In the end, we end up not having impact. So, and as an entrepreneurial expert, I believe it's never about financing alone. It's beyond financing. And I think the focus in this country has been, once you have money, you can be able to do business. And that's not true. And I think most of the initiatives that have been there, be it government, be it private sector, be it even development partners, have tended to drive necessity-driven entrepreneurship as opposed to opportunity-driven. So then what am I going to do? Why am I here? First and foremost, I accepted this call to come here and align, to make sure that we align. Why do we need to align? We need to read from the same script. so that all our efforts, all our investment can be able to take our entrepreneurs, especially MSME, to the next level. It also goes without saying that majority of our MSME are in the early stage businesses in this country. And probably that's why we keep on having a failed environment, failed businesses. And most of our businesses, the data is there, they fail in infancy, during that infancy period, below, in under 5 years. So what do we need to do? I think for the first time in this country since independence, the deputy ambassador of Germany said that Kenya in June will be marking 60 years of our independence. I know at the independence we had various commitments and our dream. One of it was to elevate poverty, which comes with economic independence. I think everything else we can say, political independence is there. Right now, the focus is economic freedom, economic independence. And I want also to announce here that the theme for this year's Madaraka Day will be focused on economic independence, economic integration, economic freedom. And therefore, the sectors in trade, sectors in investment, sectors in MSME development, we all teaming up and focusing on how we can create an enabling environment. So as a response to your first question, what you're doing is that the leadership, the current administration, has demonstrated its devotion and commitment to growing MSME by establishing a state department to solely just focus on MSME development. And that's why we're existing. And now you have an ecosystem where we can discuss policy, an ecosystem where we can be able to disrupt this environment that we've been talking about in terms of policy, in terms of financing, in terms of collateral. And this government has gone ahead and actually expanded its appetite, its risk appetite. I think the one thing with startup has been who is willing to fund you. And many people will need to spend with you a longer period of time to be assured that you have a bankable business or a bankable enterprise. And sometimes opportunity doesn't wait. You come up with an idea, nobody is willing to take you on board, and just goes like that. That's why we took over the private member bill, the startup bill. I think it was in the last parliament by the current governor for Nairobi, Honorable Sakaja, on startup. And we have been reviewing it. And where we are today is that we are now developing regulation that will help us to implement it very fast. And in the next couple of weeks, I think you're going to subject it to public participation so that they also bring in their input. And we are committed that before the end of this current financial year, around May or June, we are going to launch a startup fund. This is just to widen our risk appetite. And you talked about Hustler Fund. Hustler Fund is not any other credit, the way people like any other credit scheme. Hustler Fund comes on board with a lot of things. The first thing is to demonstrate to the world that it's possible. In Kenya, we have opportunities. Each and every space in Kenya, be it social space, be it physical space, there is a high potential for economic empowerment. And then also it goes further to show the world that each Kenya, every Kenya, regardless of your background, regardless of your education level, you have an economic value that we can harness and turn it around and make you actually participate effectively and actively in our economy. And that's why we emphasize on building and reorganizing our economy from bottom coming up. Now, what is my work? What is my key responsibility? My responsibility as the PS for MSME development is to expand the economic space for participation of majority of Kenyans who are at the bottom of the economic pyramid, enabling access of course, with working with the private sector, because even Hustler Fund, we've actually leveraged on the infrastructures which are existing in the private sector space. For example, we use technology, mobile technology, to be able to reach out to those close to 19 million Kenyans. We couldn't have done it had we gone the usual way of, access to credit. We've also shown the world that Kenyans, especially those Kenyans do not default on credits because they want it. They default because of situations. And because of pandemic, we had a period where majority of businesses, and the previous panel spoke about this, where they went under, and because of that, we needed to find a way of reintegrating them back to the economy. Over 6 million Kenyans had been listed in CRB. So meaning, it's like their case had already been sealed. So what did the government do when it came to power? The first thing His Excellency President William Ruto did was to discuss with the private sector and the financial institution to first of all delist these Kenyans from CRB so that they can be reintegrated back. Now we are having 6 million Kenyans whom we have tested through the Hustler Fund platform. And by giving them the financial access. And now with the repeat customer base, which are experiencing over 6 million, we can certainly say that Kenyans are now back and ready to participate. The second thing we are saying is that access to credit, and they've talked about, and my friend here has said, either they will ask you whether you're married or whether who's your father. Not because of anything, but because of the title deeds. In this country, land is owned by men. You see, either your father or your husband. They're the ones who owns it. So when they're asking you about, they want them to become your guarantors. But if you are not profiled in that manner, then it becomes what? A huge challenge. So we said we can actually build credit scoring system among Kenyans. So last month we introduced financial grading, trying to see how we can start building credit. I know in other parts of the world, especially in Europe and US, you want to buy a mortgage. The first thing they'll ask you is not whether you have money, but what is your credit score? But that system is not embedded in our culture. Somebody talked about culture. So actually we can start building a trust system where you borrow for a purpose. And then the whole thing here, you're borrowing because you've realized there is an opportunity. And so we are trying to demolish the collateral system by the for MSMEs and startup. You have a good idea, it's bankable. You can come forward, take, the check. Somebody will sign for you the check, probably will allow you to write the amount, sign and give you to write the amount that you want. I don't know if that's possible. And then lastly, the whole aspect of capacity building. The greatest challenge I believe that we have in Kenya and Africa as large is lack of capacity. You may have money, there could be a market somewhere, but you do not know your ways. Somebody talked about social capital, but beyond just social capital is networking. Do you get the right information at the right time? So we come in to build a strong ecosystem where we are going to work with the private sector in trying to review all those obstacles in terms of access to financing, and even tailor-making the entrepreneurial capacity building or training to make sure that we give you the right training. Most of the training I've seen in this country, especially when it comes to financing, is disbursement. Somebody tells pre-disbursement training. By the time you train me after you made up your mind to give me money, my mind is not there. I've already gotten the check. I know what I want. And I just come to a classroom, pretend I'm listening to you, or this is how you do bookkeeping, this is how you do. But once I go also there, whatever I'm going to do with my money, you really, you will have no control. So then the business ends up. And then the whole issue of market. Now, market development is very critical. So what are we doing about market? Just as I finish, is that the Kenya Kwanza government has come up with a new approach of just showing Kenyans where the opportunity lies. So how we are going to go forward is that we identify priority sectors of economic development. And we are calling them a value chain approach. And so this country, we are mapping out each region and attaching it to at least one or two value chain. So for example, we are going to focus more on leather value chain because we know we have potential. You know, we love nyama choma. So somebody say we kill and say, no, we don't kill, we slay. So many animals in this country, you know, I say we need to kill and also, no, you'll run into trouble. You're not killing. Eh? So then we have edible oil. You can't imagine that after petroleum in this country, the next product that we import heavily is edible oil at 95%. Yet we have capacity to actually produce raw materials. Across this country, we can produce the oil crops and the nuts. And then the other sector we're looking at is dairy. Have a lot of opportunity there. And I know I'm speaking to entrepreneurs here. That's where the government is going to focus. We are looking at the tea. We are looking at coffee. We are looking at textile, cotton, you know. And you are saying for the next 5 years or so, that's going to be a focus. So if you want to come up with an idea, because the problem begins at the point of onboarding your idea, generating an idea, you must speak to those opportunities because that's where you're going to get support, our focus, and a lot of our multilateral, bilateral agreement are going to focus around those value chains. This is the reason why I came here to align, so that even this new initiative, that we put more focus, we prioritize funding in those areas, startups in those areas, training in those areas, technical support in those areas. I will also be asking for technical support to help me also do market linkages for export of MSME enterprises. Maybe I should stop there and we'll come in later. Thank you. Sorry, you said I'm the government, so that's why I spoke. The government. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I've had a couple of things. One is the startup fund, which is going to be dealing with the opportunity entrepreneurs. And you said probably towards the middle of the year, we should be hearing more about that. I've heard you speaking about the startup bill by the end of the year, which is also going to help a lot in the ecosystem. I like what you spoken about in terms of enlarging the space for MSMEs to exist, and some of the things that you've done with the Hustler Fund to almost prove that it can be done so that others can follow to be able to make those kinds of investment. And I've had the whole idea about the capacity building, and I think it's very correct. I think Ian also spoke about it, that at times entrepreneurs, they need that hand holding. I think Diana also spoke about that, to be able to use the funds properly and to be able to grow. And I think this is a good opportune time to bring in Pauline, right? Because I think the PS spoke about, she said the collapsing, I don't know whether it was collapsing, the collateral system, right? And one of the key challenges, of course, most of us as Kenyans, if you're an entrepreneur, the first port of call you think about when you think about raising funding is usually your bank, but you know that they may not be as affordable, or they may not be as it's a bit difficult at times to reach out to them. And you think about them because you already have a bank account. Maybe if you have a bank account in this case, you've dealt with them from a personal perspective, but you want to come to them. The moment you walk in, you find the branch manager or the credit manager and so forth, and they have this list of requirements, all the way from the collateral, from show us the last, I don't know how long, statements and so forth. So just to bring you in, what are banks doing to be able to address this challenge? Because it is a big challenge for entrepreneurs. We speak about private equity and venture capital, and we come to FMO in a second, but that is still a small part of the kind of investment or the kind of cash that entrepreneurs are looking for. So what are banks doing? And also just in terms of the initiative that you're launching today, what might you want to see from a bank, where if you wear your banking hat, in terms of how that could enable you to lend to these class of entrepreneurs, these young businesses? Thank you.
Thank you. So I will be representing most of the financial institutions. But listening to the principal secretary, I think what is happening is that the markets are beginning, the ecosystem is beginning to dance together. And I'll explain. I actually was writing as you spoke, Madam PS, and what is going on, and again, the earlier panel, and the panel actually that started us off, talked about it, that we are recognizing, I think, Ban, you did say that we are recognizing that we need to work together. We are very many, we've been doing our own little things. Financial institutions have been said to be the ones that do not support the sector at all, but I'm happy to say that the institutions are now supporting the sector. And maybe the way we are working together is to say that in partnership with the government, the development partners, different interventions are at play, almost honestly, with all the financial institutions. Different interventions talking to SMEs. Stambik, which I represent, has an interesting intervention with support from the German government. We have actually 2 interventions that are actually looking to support the sector. Just during COVID, we launched the first intervention, and I'll speak to how it's talking to the challenges that were raised, that was supporting SMEs that were affected by COVID. What did we see? There were a lot of tech startups that were early stage. Nobody was willing to work with them. Working together with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Enterprise Development then, and now with the new ministry, we did, and the support of the German government, NGIZ, we did start a program that sought to support businesses that had closed due to COVID, but that was providing some catalytic finance. What did this do? We decided that Nairobi was overserved, as somebody did say in an earlier panel. So we went to the rural areas, picked a few counties where we decided we are going to pilot. What have we done? What have we seen? Over 500 businesses have restarted. They are now resilient, and they have accessed both the technical assistance and some soft financing to help them grow. What are we seeing, or what are we leveraging? Again, some of the challenges that came up, rural women and youth is one of the ways you can bring the financial inclusion, or bring more people, or improve, as the topic did say, access to finance. What else are we seeing? The role of technology. With the fund that we launched in partnership with the German government and GIZ, we have seen that using artificial intelligence to score an SME's financial patterns is actually making a lot of them benefit from additional funding. So we have cases, for example, in Nakuru, where we granted a Baba 100,000, a kinyozi, if I call him in Swahili, 100,000 to start up after COVID. 4 months down the line, he has accessed a commercial loan of 1.2. He's employing 39 people. What does this show? And again, listening to the panels that spoke before us and listening to the PS here, is that technology and the use of technology is playing a very significant role to improve the access to finance. The other thing we've also said is our credit scoring and the collateral. What have we done again as financial institutions is that we are looking at alternative ways. We no longer want to see whether you're listed in CRB. I think the drift from government has been very loud. So what are we doing? The county governments have set up structures. So if I am Madam PS and I'm in Uasin Gishu, there is a structure that shows that I am known in Uasin Gishu, I am registered as an SME in Uasin Gishu, and beyond that, there is our usual social system of the Nyumba Kumi, or I belong to a chama, or I have an M-Pesa statement. Now that is what the financial institutions are now using to score SMEs. It's no longer, you do not have bank statements, give us an M-Pesa statement. So for example, in Stambik, we have a huge data program. I'm sure most of you may have seen this. We are principally using the M-Pesa statement and the fact that you belong to a chama or a cooperative for that matter. So that is improving in terms of what we're doing. The other thing I would also mention here, I think for the benefit of the PS here, is that we've also realized that government has a lot of assets. The government has the ministry, but beyond the ministry, the government has agencies, and these agencies have capacity. So there's a lot of research that is sitting, for example, within the different state departments. So again, speaking for our bank, what we have done very strategically is partnered with the government. The Kenya Industrial Estates happens to be an incubator that is bringing a lot of SMEs. These SMEs, just by virtue of the fact that they're graduating from a KIE program, means they are bankable. We are working very, very much with the Micro and Small Enterprise Authority, another agency of government. This is the agency that has the mandate to support the micro enterprises. What are we seeing? Again, leveraging the government work. These people are bankable, they are repaying, we are improving access to the finance because they are coming from a system that is working. County level, we've also taken advantage of the SACCOs. Again, SACCOs exist, SACCOs lend. So how do you then lend at that level and then improve access to the finance on that level? Then finally, we are doing a lot of education, a lot of technical assistance, and it's coming in many forms. Again, speaking to the partnership we have with the German government here, we have an exciting mentorship program. We call it the SME Loop. Who is implementing this program for us is the Micro and Small Enterprise Authority and KIE. So the ecosystem is beginning to work together. The banks are no longer that institution up the hill. The bank has gone to the ground. The bank is becoming relevant, but the bank is also leveraging the assets it's always had. It always knows there's technology. The banks have a way of financing. How do you then take that and work with the different players in the market? Finally, just talking to the issue of markets, what we've seen is that most financial institutions bank quite a number of the large corporates. So if you're banking a large corporate, how do you use that corporate as a market for an SME that you have financed? So if you're looking at the different supply chains, and again, I'll speak in our case, we are very big in dairy, we are very big in tea. How do you link these SMEs that you're financing, not that you just bank them, but link them to a KTDA, link them to a Java to supply the milk, because we happen to have an ecosystem of different actors in the market. So I'll stop at that, but just to say the banks have woken up and we are doing a lot.
Thank you, Pauline. I think I'm going to charge a marketing fee for all the nice initiatives that you're doing. But I think Anne and the entrepreneurs in the room that you've picked out, because there's a lot of initiatives that have just been mentioned. And I really hope that this is not a Stanbic thing, but it's an ecosystem thing, because I'm sure, Anne, I don't know whether you've spoken to a few banks just to get a sense. There's still a fear that entrepreneurs have when they walk across to a bank, because they don't hear these stories. So it's good to share these stories and to have them public as much as possible. PS, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. I wanted to say, interesting. All those agencies are under my state department. So when I said we are aligning, and thanks to Hustler Fund, it has really disrupted, brought some sanity. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have to say that I found PS Susan to be very approachable, because I've seen her in a number of events. At the Kenya Innovation Week, she was there. There's an association that is being formed for MSMEs. She met with them the other day. So it's really good to have some youth in government, right? Because then, we can be able to have this kind of conversation. Thank you. So, Christian, let me bring you in. We heard from Band, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, about, the investing in young businesses in Africa. But I want us to get a bit specific. So if you're an entrepreneur in the room, what kind of direct initiatives should you be latching onto? Is there a website somewhere that you should be looking at? If you're a business advisory provider, what should we be looking at? Just to get a bit more specific, because I had the key objectives around the culture, around the funding and so forth. But I'm sure there's people here who are just saying, I want to know specifically, what can I do tomorrow or after this meeting to put myself in the front line to be able to get support from this initiative?
Yeah, thank you very much for the good question, actually. And it's not an easy answer, I have to say. So I'm sorry to disappoint you on that. But what is IYBA? If you look what has been discussed right now, actually, in a way to work together to support entrepreneurs and early stage business, which really need help, and not to do it in a fragmented way. And also, I'm speaking now as from a European side, actually, that we go and sometimes we are separate and fragmented, and we might not have a joint effort that could be more impactful. So that's the first part of IYBA. The second part is to take a long-term approach, which is needed if you're looking at the IYBA, at the entrepreneurs and the ecosystem, and you want to create a change. You need to go together, but also you need to have a long-term view because things don't change one day to another. The third one is, okay, access to finance. So who writes the check, of course. And this is a bit complicated. So we see, of course, that, and to put you an example, we have this program that has been recently launched, IYBA seed, which was discussed earlier. And I think it's a good way to explain it. We need to see what are the needs of the entrepreneurs in each country. Each ecosystem is completely different. So the initiative is a regional African initiative. In Kenya and in Nairobi, but also outside Nairobi, you have different challenges. So that's the first step, to understand what are the needs of the entrepreneurs to continue to grow. So maybe they receive good financing in the beginning, but then afterwards there is a lack of support, lack of financing. So it's a bit to understand this and to see how we can working together with different member states and key players in the ground, support entrepreneurs in this journey to grow. And when I mean key players on the ground is, of course, the financial institutions, but also the government, small and medium enterprises, entrepreneurs themselves, the culture, all the aspects of the ecosystem, accelerators, incubators, and TV centers. Now,